important companies further down on the document. The last page, page 40, shows Lloyds Banking Group, Lloyds TSB Bank. And it's very important because when I was removed as a director from Expool Manor Freehold Limited, which was initiated by the Flemings, it was because I had acquired forged Lloyds bank documents and was refusing to file them as a director, refusing to commit a very serious crime. You can also see the Hakluyt International Advisory Board Company. This is a very important company because it links the intelligence agencies through to the royal family, to Russia, to the international government fraud, to the Flemings, and also to Ukraine via the Flemings. An international collaboration of deception in relation to the threat of war. Here is the Hakluyt International Advisory Board shown on Companies House. It's dissolved in August 2024 as I exposed the international government fraud. It was incorporated in 1995, 2 years before the death of the original founder of the Church of Satan and the re-establishment that took place that year. Back to the royal foundation of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Here's a slightly clearer image. And you can see that there's mention of Durham companies. Well, this is also important because Durham is where the Archbishop of Canterbury worked and is a particularly important religious location in the United Kingdom. Further up, we can see connections to other banks, HSBC, and also a company of the Queen's 80th Birthday Trust and the Children's Garden Party Limited. Bearing in mind we're talking about international government fraud linked to child trafficking. At the bottom of the document are two incredibly important companies here. Ingenious Film Partners 2 LLP. This company links every area of the research that I have done. It links to the Hampstead Child Abuse Inquiry. It links to specific cases of what appears to be mass murder of children on the Isle of Jersey. It links through every area very quickly that I have done. Unfortunately, it also links very quickly to very close friends of mine, which shows how vast this problem really is. You'll notice another company, the Monks Investment Trust Public Limited Company. Well, that company is a fraudulent company in itself. But this led to inquiries for me in relation to abuse of children on islands off the coast of Wales. And you can see some of the articles at the top here. This is the document that I've produced. And now from various years. These are screenshots taken from the evidence of the articles. The research then very quickly links to Island House Investments on the right, to the Oxford Foundation for Ethics and Communications in Health, Care and Practice. Now, this is important because it's where Ghislaine Maxwell and Robert Maxwell lived. And this company dissolved in April 2024 as I'm exposing the fraud, and it was incorporated in 1998, 3 years before the World Trade Center disaster. That company on its incorporation document links to Islamic Studies. It's a Center for Islamic Studies, but also Hebrew and Jewish Studies. Now, this is incredibly important. Remember, the deception by Satan against all faith groups, but in particular at the moment, Muslims and Christians. And we're going to look at the likely reason why that is the case on the Albert Pike document a bit later. Then connects very quickly to German companies, Channel Islands, and then importantly to JP Morgan, because JP Morgan connects to the Flemings who removed me as a director from Expool Manor Freehold Limited. And here's JP Morgan. Remember, these are evidential links very, very quickly coming through from the royal company. JP Morgan, Emerging Europe, Middle East and Africa Securities. And you can see it was incorporated in October 2002, the year after the World Trade Center disaster. And the previous company names links to Fleming's and also to Russia. But they panicked and changed the name, you can see in the red box, on the 23rd of November 2022. As I'm starting to escalate my inquiries and reporting it to the relevant organisations, they changed the company name and removed the word Russian and change it to JP Morgan Emerging Europe, Middle East and Africa Securities PLC to try and hide the connection and the collaborative deception and plans very likely to an escalatory satanic attack against humanity involving Russia, Fleming's, America, international governments in fact, but actually where they've been infiltrated by a satanic cult linking to the Church of Satan. It then also connects very quickly to BlackRock companies, which in turn then links to Atlas companies. Now, Atlas relates to nuclear weapons and also links into Jeffrey Epstein. And you can see here from BlackRock, we go via one of the other directors actually above, then links to Ingenious Film Partners 2 again, and more JP Morgan Fleming companies. So remember, I released significant evidence on the 14th of May 2024, including the threat from directed energy. They would have been watching all of my evidence, and on that very same day, this portrait was unveiled of the king. And here's a BBC News article to confirm the date. 14th of May 2024. And within the portrait appears to be an inverted image of a horned face that appears almost identical to the Baphomet shown here. The Baphomet is a satanic symbol that was used for the Church of Satan. It is a figure incorporated across various occult and Western esoteric traditions. During trials starting in 1307, the Knights Templar were accused of heresy for worshipping Baphomet as a demonic idol. The Knights Templar links in to the Freemasons, and the Freemasons appear to be in control of this criminal system, with many of them possibly not realising that they have been infiltrated by the Church of Satan. Huge deception, potentially even against them. Reading on, it says Baphomet subsequently resurfaced during the 19th century speculation and debate regarding the suppression of the Templars, with various occult and mystical traditions claiming Baphomet as a symbol of balance and synthesis, originating in teachings of the Gnostics, while others maintained Baphomet as a profane deity. Since 1856, which is 12 years after Companies House started, the figure of Baphomet has been associated with the sabbatic goat illustration of Eliphas Levi, composed of binary elements representing the symbolization of the equilibrium of opposites, both human and animal, both masculine and feminine, combined in metaphysical unity. Levi's intention was to symbolize his concept of balance, with Baphomet representing the goal of perfect social order. I suspect this is why we have connections to transgenderism and potentially a satanic attack against humanity leading to transhumanism, or at least that was very likely their plan before they became so exposed. Elon Musk has already been linked to the international government fraud via Starlink and to Export Manor Freehold Limited, and here he is wearing a Baphomet at a Halloween party in, yes, you guessed it, 2022. You can see the inverted image of the cross in the centre of the Baphomet's head, a goat's head, remember. Here's the Tesla symbol. Of course, Elon Musk links heavily to the Tesla company. Does it look like a goat's head facing with the horns coming out from the side? A complete mockery of moral conscience given to us by our Creator to protect us all. It's clear that the whole system is completely the opposite and is therefore evil, satanic, exploitative and victimizing of humanity, but in particular of children, the most innocent of all. Another interesting article from November 2022, a £1,200 metal sculpture of Elon Musk's head on a goat body riding a rocket parked outside Tesla HQ failed to elicit a response from the billionaire. I suspect this could symbolise a greater threat by these people to humanity via an escalation in the weaponised systems that they now have. Remember, if we have a satanic cult behind this, then that means potentially the plan was for an ultimate evil conclusion to their plans. Potentially whilst they run and hide in their tunnel systems as part of their reset against humanity, now they are fully exposed. Earlier we spoke about Judaism and the infiltration of that particular faith group and how significant that is. Because it's very clear throughout the fraud that there is a connection to supposed Jewish companies. But I made a claim that they are not real Jews. And here I think is a good piece of evidence that supports that. This is the incorporation document for a company called the Jewish Community Centre UK. And we can see immediately it's linked to Jordan's on the document. So it's linked to the fraud. But as we go down, we'll look at some important evidence on this document. And I acquired this a very long time ago, back in early 2024. And one of the directors here, Bernard Balkin, who's a doctor, is linked to the Charles Darwin Trust. Now, this in my mind is incredibly important because this shows a connection to a supposed Jewish company to the theory of evolution. Charles Darwin, okay, who was also a Freemason, okay, which links back in to the satanic element, which we'll come to in a bit in the Albert Pike document. Now, the theory of evolution would disprove all faith groups, including Judaism. And here we are, we have a connection. And you can see they're a UK-US dual nationality. They're also connected to technological companies. Further down, we have another director who is connected to various companies, including those that have featured significantly in positions of significance throughout the fraud. We have RAC companies. We also have other Israel companies and Lex companies. Now, Lex are part of the Lloyd's banking group. Remember what we've spoken about Lloyd's Bank. But we also have Royal associated companies. You can see here the Princess Royal Trust for carers. We also have links to Morgan Brown Limited. I suspect that relates back to the JP Morgan family. We then have links to cinemas, okay, and the potential mind control through subliminal messages of entertainment. We then have connections to the Royal Automobile Club Foundation. So royal connections. And then we have Hampstead Theatre at the bottom. This is important because that company links to the Hampstead Child Abuse Inquiry, a very sinister crime against children. And it appears, according to the testimony, an account of two older children, the death of babies, the murder of babies, and therefore the link to adrenochrome harvesting, which is very clearly relevant in all of the research. Satanic practices. Now, there are several directors on this company, and only one of them has an address shown in Switzerland. We mentioned the Egyptians earlier. Now, I suspect that the satanic cult linking to the ancient Egyptian resurgence is now based in Switzerland, a neutral country. Okay, it's also where the CERN Hadron Collider is based, under Geneva, which created the God particle. And when you look at the symbol for CERN, it's 3 6s, 666, twisted round into its emblem. It's also where the World Health Organization is based, which is hugely part of this. And the interventions that we've all been told we've had to have since 2019 is a huge part of this. But one director in this company only links to Switzerland, and it's a dame, okay? And they're also connected to a bank, South Bank. They are also linked to various important children's companies. We can see parents and abducted children together. Bearing in mind we're talking about crimes against children. We have the Museum for Children, Eureka, the Museum for Children Limited, Royal Opera House, that features in the fraud, the Royal Opera House Foundation. We then have the removal, or the attempted removal, by crossing out the word Apollo. Is this trying to remove reference to Donald Trump idolizing Apollo, or to the Apollo landing, which links into the international government fraud, and I suspect is part of the deception? Let's face it, if you add one more letter to NASA, it spells Satan. And Donald Trump is hugely implicated in this international government fraud. The evidence is there. It's shown within from the research of his golf clubs in Scotland, linking in very quickly to Jimmy Savile via Dundas and Wilson, and to the royal family, and to the Freemasons. Further down in the document, we have links to various book publishing companies. Remember, the full control over all information to fit the narrative of this fraud, the satanic fraud. We then have connections to various other companies here, and bankers. German banker. Okay, so we have a German connection, but an address in London. The Royal Institution of Great Britain and Bank of Lumi, which had featured in the fraud, crossed out. And that is a bank that ties Israel to the UK, and it's fraudulent, linked to fraud. We also have Neurodiagnostics, so potential mind control. And remember Elon Musk's Neuralink, which I suspect is a potential threat of transhumanism. Various marketing media companies then, again, control of information. Also the Prison Reform Trust, okay, the ability to make it appear as though people have gone to prison when they have, or falsely imprison people to silence them as well, as part of this satanic system. A mention of the Yoni Yezna Memorial Foundation. Yoni Yezna, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, links to the Allenby street bus bombing, where a Palestinian suicide bombing supposedly took place in 2002, the year after the World Trade Center disaster. And it was on a bus in the center of Tel Aviv's business district. 6 civilians were killed in the attack and approximately 70 were injured. Hamas claimed responsibility for the attack, according to this Wikipedia entry. And here is the mention of Yoni Yezna in the article. I suspect this was a collaborative satanic attack to lead to an escalation of the war in Israel, a mass deception against everybody. As I believe the World Trade Center disaster And evidence suggests also the bombings in London in 2005 was a collaborative deception by international governments who have been infiltrated by a satanic cult. Also, the same director is mentioned, is linked to the Portland Trust. Well, Portland is off the coast of Weymouth in Dorset, which is where this fraud was first started to be established by me, or the inquiries that I found, although Gordon Browden had actually found initial connections to an address of 788 to 790 Finchley Road prior to the outbreak of COVID. And I actually suspect that that is what triggered the false outbreak. Same director links to Britain-Israel Communications and Research Centre. And then further down, this director, Clive Lawton, links to the NHS. Also to the Anne Frank Trust. And you'll see that further research that I've recently submitted, or research that I've conducted and will publish, shows that connects to the international adrenochrome harvesting from tortured children. Another director further down, Alan, links to McCann Erickson Advertising Limited. That company is featured very, very quickly in relation to the research of the Madeleine McCann case. So we now have a very quick link to the Madeleine McCann case. You can also see they're connected to the Spiro Institute for the Study of Jewish History and Culture. And I suspect history has been rewritten. And just to show you the bottom of the document, where it has all directors listed, all of them have an address of London, other than the one in Switzerland that we previously mentioned. So let's look at the Albert Pike letter, the document that I've got, and it says the following is a letter that speculation claimed that Albert Pike wrote to Mazzini in 1871. Now that's 100 years exactly before the creation of the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab, who was German and the chair of the World Economic Forum, stepped down within 3 days as the chair after I sent my evidence to them of the Companies House international government fraud. 3 days. That had never happened since 1971 when it was created, and this was in 2024. Reading on, it says 1871. It was regarding a conspiracy involving 3 world wars that were planned in an attempt to take over the world. The Pike letter to Mazzini was on display in the British Museum Library in London until 1977. That's the year I was born. This letter has been claimed by many internet sites to reside in the British Museum Library in London, which denies the letter exists. Reading on, it says Mazzini was an Italian revolutionary leader in the mid-1800s, as well as the director of the Illuminati. Now, this makes a connection now to the Vatican Church, where the Illuminati linked to, and you will see from other evidence that I've got that key individuals appear to link through to Italian families that then link in with the Illuminati and the black nobility, tying in to the sacrifice of children and the consumption of their blood and crimes against humanity, all tying in to this international fraud. Reading on, it says Albert Pike, in brackets historical Masonic figure, was a 33-degree Mason, occultist, Grand Master and creator of the southern jurisdiction of the Masonic Scottish Rite Order. Now, there are very important connections to Edinburgh and Scotland. In relation to this, it's where the oldest active Freemason lodge is based. We have very key individual Scottish individuals, very key Scottish individuals who I suspect are going to be top-level Freemasons. I suspect this also includes Douglas Dougie Smith, who is the special advisor for the last few prime ministers, who research suggests has been arrested for threats to kill, started up fever sex parties, and practices dark arts. I suspect Madeleine McCann's father, Gerald McCann, is also a Scottish Freemason. And we have an individual in my company called John Fleming, who is Scottish, who was Deborah Fleming's husband, who I also suspect is going to be a high-level, top-level Freemason linked to the Scottish Rite Order. Reading on, it says, following are apparently extracts from the letter showing how 3 world wars have been planned for many generations. I'm not going to read the first and second one. You can pause it if you want to. But it relates to Israel and Palestine, which is obviously what we're seeing now. And remember, that was all triggered after the exposure started with the fraud. So first of all, we had the special military operation by Putin in February 2022. On the 7th of October 2023, we had the supposed, I suspect it's staged, deliberate staged by this satanic cult attack against Israel by Palestinians at the Nova Music Festival. And my research shows that links straight back into the international government fraud and deception. But it says the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, in brackets the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight into complete physical, moral, spiritual and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nation the effect of the absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. So that is satanic, of course. Lucifer refers to Satan. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Notice it doesn't mention the destruction of Islam. So they are trying to maintain the Muslim belief system, but remove Christianity. But what everyone needs to understand, and in particular the Muslims, is the satanic, evil infiltration of all faith groups to create division, divide, risk of conflict, when in fact the deception, the satanic deception, is against everybody, and everyone will be victimized. Literally everybody. Okay, so people need to understand how important this really is. So I urge you all to get behind a collective strategy. I don't believe it can wait until May. I suspect that group is deliberately put in place by those behind this fraud to act as a time delay for potentially a sinister attack against humanity. And we have to know what the root problem really is before we know what a collective strategy needs to be. This is it. The Companies House fraud is being used by international governments to create criminal entity companies that are now running the world. These are able to exploit and victimize billions of people through various crimes, but in particular the children, the most innocent of all. And to know the problem is to know the solution. And that is now, at least on a transitional basis, a transparent financial system for both local, national and international governance. Of course, there needs to be now the verification of company and corporations to ensure that there is liability and accountability. A company's house are panicking, and this month in March, they publicised their latest proposals. But it appears that that allows a loophole for the money laundering activity in relation to this fraud through the secretaries of companies. And we're going to look at that in another video. Now, I suspect because there is a satanic cult, it appears, behind this, then they may be willing to carry out the most serious evil action against not only humanity, but potentially the planet itself. So we cannot wait until May. So I urge you, no matter what your culture, what your faith group, if you don't have a belief, wherever you're from, whatever your background, whatever your ethnicity, unite over this collective strategy, because you have all been deceived. And the only strategy that I believe will work is complete non-compliance of the system by an international strike, the withholding of taxes and bills. This is the most effective, legal and peaceful method. This will hopefully prompt a reaction from the international governments and then can be used as leverage to a change in the system that is now essential. Now, I'm hoping no matter who you are, you believe in moral conscience in a rational state of mind. In other words, you wouldn't want to be victimized, so you won't victimize others, whether that be through abuse, whether that be through crime, fraud, insults, suffering and victimization or exploitation. Let that be the foundation. So I urge you all, 28th of March 2025, prepare, promote it, is very important because I'm being silenced and suppressed, and participate in an international strike. Stop working, stop making bill payments and stop making tax payments. It can't wait any longer. I suspect the consequences in doing so could be dire for humanity. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And hopefully everything I've said